joining me today. We have Robben Ford here, all the way from America.
Thank you, yes.
To sort of talk about his upcoming tour with the Rodger Fox Big Band. Mm-hmm. And I believe you played with Rodger Fox before and toured with Rodger's band, is that correct?
Yeah, it was 10 or 11 years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was a smaller version. You know, I think there were like 4 horns and a rhythm section, and it was myself, Long John Baldry.
Oh, yeah.
He was like the headliner. And we had a very nice time, you know. It was my second trip to New Zealand, but it was actually the first time I got to see New Zealand. Okay. First time I was like in Auckland for 3 days, and boom, that was it. In and out of town. Everything I do, gonna be funky from now on.
So you're here to do a bunch of concerts with Rodger, and you'll be playing around the country. Have you been? I think I saw Dunedin on the list and all places like that. I don't think you would have played any of those cities before.
On that trip with Rodger, we went from one end to the other of New Zealand.
Did?
Yeah, we did. We got around. So I may have been there, but it was so long ago. The only thing I remember being in Christchurch. We must have been in Wellington.
Yeah.
Certainly Auckland, and several other cities. So
fantastic. Oh, well, welcome. We're
Thanks.
So glad you're here.
Delighted.
I remember last time you were here, I had a gig and I couldn't get anyone to sub because all the guitar players in town were going to see you play.
Oh, I see.
So I didn't get to go see you.
Sorry about that.
I don't know.
Should have got a trombone player.
Yeah. Oh, let's not get started on trombones. They're an easy
An accordion player.
Yeah, there you go. So you recently moved to Nashville. I wonder what was the reasoning for doing so? Sort of curiosity.
Well, you know, I've been touring for the most part of the last 30 years, and I'm very tired of touring. Something like this is great. You know, I don't have I'm not carrying a band. It's not on my shoulders. I get to just show up and
play some guitar and sing. Yeah, great.
And so this is wonderful, you know. So getting off the road, though, you know, really, it was the main reason. And in order to do so, I need an environment that's supportive. You know, I need resources. I need to be able to, you know, draw on things right away. And in California, where I've been living the last little over 20 years, I have a house in a beautiful little town called Ojai, California, and it's about an hour and a half north of Los Angeles, and I've never liked Los Angeles.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And it's an hour and a half to get there and an hour and a half to get back. And I've been on the road a lot, so I don't really want to drive in and back, you know. So I wanted to cut all that out, you know. I wanted to be in a place that I liked, have the resources that I needed right at hand, you know. Yeah. And I have that in Nashville.
I was curious where you saw the future of guitar going and all this music. I mean, I know if we all knew we would be doing it, right? But what do you see the future of guitar music?
Well, you know, guitar music has pretty much gone underground, you know. I mean, compared to where it was certainly in the 60s and 70s, 80s, 90s, you know, even into the 90s, you know, the guitar was still kind of the ruling instrument, you know. So it's no longer, and there is no single instrument that is dominant now. The world of music is all production. So it's not about instrumentalists. It's not about players. I don't even think it's about great singing, even though it's ideal to have great singing. You have terrible singers who are, you know, through the magic of Pro Tools, you know, are able to sound better than they are. And so, you know, human beings are no longer really exposed to, the true nature of music, the true nature of making music. So it's unfortunate, from that point of view. So I think if you would like for me to be honest, I would say that a musician needs to consider a lot of other things besides playing his instrument in order to have a career.
Yeah,
it's good to have 3, 4, 5 things that you can do in order to have things to give to any given situation, and be very creative in terms of how are we going to do the impossible, and I think it's actually doable. But you have to realize that there's no longer a clear path, and that basically you're on your own to create your own path, to success. And I think everyone wants success in one form or another. And for me, having been on the road for most of my life as a professional, and really not wanting to do that anymore, I've done a lot in terms of presenting myself as an instructor, a teacher, and teaching is a very good thing to do.
Yeah.
And I poured myself into songwriting, and I poured myself into singing lessons, and really trying to make myself a very broad, musician. So and even learn more and more about internet and social media and all these things. They're important,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially in this day and age, social media seems to be a big part of.
Sure.
How's that affected your music and what you do these days? I mean, are you active in that stuff, or do you have people manage it for you, or how does it work for you?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I have people who do that. I do a certain amount of it as well, and it is something that I've kind of had to drag myself to because I am an old schooler. I didn't grow up that way. So it's going to be a lot easier, for younger people to, adapt to this environment than someone like myself, who comes from a very different world, professionally and musically. So, but I'm learning it, and I'm rather than fight it, I'm moving into it and towards it and embracing it. So
I think that's very smart. That's sort of been my approach too. Is
of course,
because I'm of a slightly different generation, but sort of the pre-streaming and all that sort of stuff generation. So you can't fight it; it's going to happen. So you have to be trying to work with it, right?
Find a way to make these things work.
What gear did you bring for this tour? What guitar did you bring?
The only thing I brought was a very simple pedal board, and I have a 54 Les Paul that I converted from P90 pickups to humbucker pickups, and I bought a pair of actual PAFs.
Wow!
It cost me a fortune.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And I had to route the guitar out for that. I had to refinish the top. But it was the only way that I was going to get anywhere near having a 56, 7, or 8, let alone a 59 Les Paul. Mm-hmm. And this thing is very close to that, and I'm very excited about it.
There's some magic in those guitars, isn't there? The older instruments.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm strictly a vintage guy. That's all I play is old guitars.
And you've still got the Dumble, because someone left a question saying, ask him if he sold the Dumble. I heard he sold the Dumble. And I thought,
oh, well, I have. I had 2 Dumbles, and I did sell one of them, which was the second one. And the first one, though, I still have and will never let go of.
That's what I would have thought.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you? It's like that's iconic with your sound,
It's been, like I couldn't have done quite what I have done, without that. I feel so. I'm indebted to Alexander Dumble,
Wow, it's a tool to express your music, isn't it? So that's really great. Mm-hmm. Someone asked, what amp did you use on Misdirected Blues to get those clean sounds?
Dumble.
I knew it was. I said it
Of
was. He said,
course.
"Oh, it sounds too sparkly, almost like a Fender-y type thing or something," which is kind of what a Dumble is, but he thought even more so. So
No, and it was just a combination of the amplifier, the speaker cabinet. Like that album, I used a few different cabinets, and it was just sort of a transitional period for me. That's actually I had the second Dumble amplifier made right around that time, and so I did a fair amount of that record playing through a 4x12 Dumble cabinet closed back and 80-watt speakers in it. So it's very different, production of sound there than what the 2x12 with Celestion 65s. So I can appreciate that someone would perceive it that way, but there were a lot of reasons that the sound was different on that on that album.
another question someone had was: is there going to be a new Renegade Creation album with Mike Landau and Gary?
Yeah, Gary Novak, Jimmy Haslip, and not to my knowledge, but Jimmy Haslip, the bassist, who was with the Yellow Jackets, as I'm sure you know, for all those years. Jim and I have also recorded with a group called Jing Chi. Which,
That's another question someone had.
Okay.
About that.
Well, that was strictly an instrumental group, and we made Vinnie Colaiuta, Jimmy Haslip, and myself. We made 2 studio albums and 1 live recording. And last year, we recorded a new album, which I don't know if anyone is aware of. It came out last September, and the record's called Supremo.
Okay.
So that is something new and refreshing, and I really like the record a lot. So I would recommend that to the fans, of course. Yeah.
So who are you currently listening to? Like, who's filling your ears, so to speak?
Well, I don't listen to guitar players, if that's part of the question anyway.
Music in general.
I don't listen to music as much as I used to. And when I do, I like Indian music. And classical music is something that I'm still interested in, There's the occasional artist that pops out that gets my attention, and this I'm happy to talk about because it's such a unique recording. The band Alabama Shakes finally, made their second record. I say finally, I mean this was a couple of years ago, I think, when the record came out, because my last record is called Into the Sun.
Yep, I've heard it.
And when I was cutting my record, across the hall was Alabama Shakes cutting Sound and Color.
Wow.
This record that, their last record.
Yeah.
And I had already liked their first record. I liked the band. They're like this R&B group, like a real natural R&B group with a great singer,
Oh, yeah.
And I like the guitar player too. The things that he plays they're simple, but they sound good,
Set the song.
Yeah. So, but the second record is produced by Blake Mills, whom I don't know if you know who Blake is.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So
Great musician.
Blake is a super talent.
Yeah.
I mean, he really is. He's a super talent, and he can't be more than 30, I don't think, now, years old. He's the producer of that record, and he brought things to that record that turned it into something so special and unique. I want to say this in particular because it seems to me that people almost don't even realize when something is actually outstanding. There are things that are actually outstanding. There are people who are really doing outstanding things, and they're just a part of the mash of this CD, that group, that whatever, you know. So people should really, I think musicians, and especially musicians today, and this is actually a part of, it could actually be a part of what we were talking about earlier, like what it is to be a musician today, you know, and having a variety of skills and an open mind.
Absolutely, yeah.
The Sound and Color record is an incredible work of art, and it actually should be groundbreaking. It should be record of the year for sure. I don't know, the Grammys already happened, I think.
I think they have, yeah, for this.
Yeah.
Possibly.
I wonder if that record got the attention that it deserved.
Yeah. So someone asked, what was it like playing with Randy Bricker's Soul Bop Special Edition show?
Oh, well, I had a ball. I had a ball with that group. It was a really good band. And actually, Steve Lukather was also on that tour. We were in Japan. Soul Bop, I remember doing Japan. I don't think I did anything else with Soul Bop but Japan. Wow. And Steve Lukather was on it. Steve's keyboard player, whose name I cannot remember, but really talented. And the drummer, I can't remember who it was.
Wow.
But I believe
it gets like that, though, right? If you play so much, you sort of...
Yeah, well, I mix it up, too, though, because I did a thing called Miles Smiles, which was a group that was basically Miles Davis tribute band. And Omar Hakim was on drums, Dale Jones was on bass, and I get a little mixed up between those two bands.
Oh, man, those guys are ridiculously good.
Oh, my God.
Someone asked also, what was it like working with Joni Mitchell, and did that require a completely different approach? I mean, because her music harmonically is quite unique, you might say.
Well, I mean, playing with Joni Mitchell was, for me, only a learning experience. I mean, I was a student. I can't even believe that they hired me. You know, I was basically a blues guitar player who wanted to be a jazz musician, and they saw talent in me. I mean, I picked things up quickly, so I think that's what kind of gave them faith that this could probably work out, because I had never worked with pedals, and that was a part of the gig, and the volume pedal thing. I'd never done any of those things. Wow. And I'd never really, I'd never played in any kind of a group like that, that required skills that I didn't have, man. So God bless them for, letting me learn on their time.
It's like an apprenticeship, isn't it, really?
Completely. And to this day, it is the best thing that ever happened to me.
Wow.
Yeah. Playing with Joni Mitchell, that first year with the LA Express was just nothing has ever compared in my musical life to that year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Man.
It's precious to me.
Yeah. It's similar kind of question was about working with Miles, of course, which you probably get all the time. I know Schofield told me that he gets asked all the time about Miles, and he's like, I do my own music too.
Yeah.
But about that, and did you take cues from, like, obviously Stern had been around at that time, Mikey, and he was doing his thing, and like how that whole operated? Because I've heard from people that working with Miles could be a pretty loose situation, but then he knew what he wanted and what he didn't want, and could be pretty brutal too, by all accounts.
Yeah.
So how was that for you?
Well, I experienced all those things.
Did you?
Going into the group, my first show I played without a rehearsal. I met the band in the hotel lobby.
Oh, wow.
So it was the same.
Pressure.
Yeah, it was one of those things,
Mm-hmm.
I had received a couple of tapes and a couple of really poor charts. So I basically learned a couple of melodies off the charts, which were very difficult because they were poorly written. And, listening to the music, I just listened to the music a lot, just took it in, And went out there and, I met Miles backstage before the first show, so it was terrifying.
Oh, so you hadn't met Miles before you got...
No.
So was it his management who rang you or something?
Well, initially, he made the initial call.
Oh, did he? So
Yeah.
what was that like? Hey, this is Miles Davis. No, it's not. Yes, it is.
Well, when he called, my wife actually answered the phone, and it was Miles Davis calling for Robben Ford, you know.
Wow.
So I took the phone, and, you know, he's just like, Robben, what you doing out there? You know. So, you know, nothing. He says, you want to play with me? I said, well, yeah. He goes, okay, here's Jim. And he just gave me to his tour manager.
Fantastic.
And I spoke with him once about something that was added to the repertoire. He sent another song to learn, and we had a conversation about that. But anyway, so yeah, I went out there, no rehearsal, you know, and just hit the stage running. You know, he would test you. You know, he would mess with you, but I realized that, oh, he's just messing with me. You know, so it was a sink or swim situation. Yeah. You know, he could intimidate you till you couldn't play if he wanted to. You know, and if you were willing to stand around and be pushed around by Miles Davis, he'll push you around, you know. But if you go, hey man, you know, and say something to him, he would laugh. So I figured that out, like after 5 shows, you know, he did some weird shit to me, you know. And I just went, I'm not having it, you know. And,
wow.
You know, we'd had our exchange about that. And he was totally cool. You know, from there on out, it was clear sailing, you know. And he would say some weird thing to me, and I would say something back. And he would laugh.
Fantastic.
So it was great. Yeah.
So you learned his respect at that point.
Yeah. That's what he wanted.
That's what he wanted.
He wanted that of you, yeah. Because
wow.
if he would just walk right over you if you'd let him. And if you stood your own ground, he's like, cool.
Mm.
Yes.
So you're here to work with Rodger Fox, and you're going to be playing around New Zealand. What do you know of New Zealand?
Well, only, you know, what I saw, you know, my last time here 10, 11 years ago.
Had you heard of Rodger before you came?
Back then? No.
So it was like, hey, it's Rodger Fox on the phone.
Well, the invitation, I can't remember how it came. You know, maybe probably through management or agent, you know. And so I met him, you know, over here. I don't know that I spoke with him before, but I might have about music or something before coming over.
But you were here just last year, I think, with a Cream show?
Yeah. Very strange.
Was it? Yeah, that was, I remember seeing that advertised, and it just kind of sprung out of the blue. It was almost like, oh, there it is, you know.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
but hey, that's the gigs. Oh, I look forward to seeing you play on Saturday night, and thanks so much, Robben, for coming and doing this today. I mean, I really appreciate it. And,
thank you.
All the best for the gigs, and
all right.
see you there.
Okie dokie. Cheers.
Thanks, man.
All right.